Sup gamers, during the pre-release and beta, I mainly played with Whirlwind, and this video is to share my thoughts and the info I got about the skill. First off, Whirlwind is the only skill you can use while you're on the move. It's not like Hammer of the Ancients or Death Blow where you gotta pick your spot and cast. The mobility here is what adds to the potential of fast clear speeds, as you'll see in the background. As of the beta, Whirlwind made use of certain legendaries that improve DPS and mobility, and I'm gonna go over these purely for the sake of showing the synergies between skills and legendaries and some of the mechanics here. I want to be clear that I'm not saying that these are necessarily going to be your best in slot items come release, because that would be dishonest since I really don't know what to expect from the endgame yet. So here you see with the max roll, Whirlwind's critical strike chance is increased by up to 40% for channeling for 4 seconds. You'll see here that lucky hits with the core skills such as Whirlwind will extend your berserking buff, and crits will double that effect. Here's another that grants you movement speed for every crit. And so it's no secret that, we'll most likely find more legendaries that provide utility to our builds via crits. So keep an eye out for those affixes and consider if they're a good fit for your final build. And because from the looks of things, we might have gear and builds that are going to give Whirlwind a ridiculous capacity to crit under certain conditions. Now this one is interesting because any shout or buff cast while channeling will interrupt your Whirlwind. Visually, it might not look like it, but when you account for your buff icons right above your spells, it's clear that these spells interrupt Whirlwind. Here's an example of challenging shout doing just that. You can see the stack of 2 representing 20% crit chance reset after the challenging shout. And you can also see another buff here that is consumed after the shout. We'll go over what that other buff is later in the video. But did you know that Ashava killed over 10 million players during the beta? And I'm pretty sure I witnessed like 200 of those kills. So, Fury Generation. During the beta, it felt like the best Fury generators revolved around shouts. I used the legendary that generated Fury per second while the shout was active, and it's important to note that this affix stacked per shout that I had. In addition to that, I used another legendary that reduced the cooldown of my shouts by up to 12 seconds when I used them around enemies. So this combination gave me the ability to generate a Fury at any point of the dungeon, depending on how I manage those cooldowns. I'll also mention that there were other Fury generators available during the beta that involved Fury from healing, Fury from applying crowd control effects, and finally Fury from berserking. And maybe we'll see other forms of generating Fury when the game is released. Most likely these other affixes will have more promise to them as your gameplay changes. Maybe we'll be taking more damage and healing more during combat. So perhaps Fury from healing will be more viable. Most likely our builds will keep berserking up more often, and so that affix would be more viable. It's just something to think about. Now the bread and butter of Whirlwind during the beta, snapshotting. You know, hopefully this mechanic was intended and isn't going anywhere, because without it, Whirlwind damage was barely enough to clear trash and elites on veteran mode. And honestly, it felt like ass against bosses. Snapshotting gave us the damage and, in my opinion, made the gameplay more engaging. So how does it work? Basically, there were 3 known effects that enhanced your next core skill, in this case Whirlwind. It's confirmed that these enhancements would last for the entire time you channeled it, so if you could hold Whirlwind for, let's say, 30 seconds, and the average tick of Whirlwind is, let's say, 2 times a second, each one of those 60 hits are enhanced by those snapshot buffs. So the effects tested that can be snapshot are the following. Attacking enemies with a basic skill increases the damage of your next core skill cast by 5 to 10% up to 50%. Each point of fury you generate while at maximum fury grants your next core skill 2 to 4% increased damage up to 60 to 120%. Dealing direct damage with a weapon mastery skill causes your next core skill to make enemies vulnerable for 1 to 3 seconds. Now, I'll make a point here that there were other temporary buffs like percent damage from a barrier, damage from Warcry and Berserking, extra damage you can stack from Supreme Wrath of the Berserker, even things like percent damage for being healthy while using the polearm. I have not accurately tested these buffs, so I can't confirm or deny that they can be snapshot. Barb players out there are going to have to test all that. But the 3 effects that do snapshot are interesting because of the descriptions. If we look closely, these effects enhance your next core skill. I'm not saying that this defines every effect that can be snapshot with the Whirlwind, but I am saying that when we're playing on release, if we find any more items or effects that target your next core skill, pay very close attention to what it does and give it a test. Some more info on snapshotting. A snapshot of those buffs will be interrupted if you use any shout while you channel Whirlwind, and doing so will reset all your power and take a new snapshot of what buffs you have the moment you reset. Here's the same example of challenging shout resetting my snapshot. As you can see, it consumes my core skill damage percentage stacks. Also note that because Whirlwind is technically being interrupted, Dire Whirlwind, which gives you critical hit chance per second channeled, and Violent Whirlwind, which gives you damage percentage after 2 seconds channeled, are also reset. Now, some of us have seen some wild ass videos of a Barb hitting for over 100,000 damage each Whirlwind tick, and another one of a Barb hitting over 11 million damage with Whirlwind using the same method. But to my knowledge, this is a bug with controllers and or console that resulted in their Whirlwinds not being interrupted by shouts. And it's suspected that these buffs were being stacked on buffs, and there were snapshots of snapshots, and things got pretty ridiculous. Hopefully this is addressed before release. The footage in the background was what I put together for the level 25 in the beta. I dropped the basic skill for Leap. Leap gave me a lot more mobility, some fury generation from the skill tree, and a burst damage from a legendary affix that's synchronized with Whirlwind. Honestly, Leap was just pretty fucking fun to use. By no means is this a guide for what to build on release. It's just information to consider as you level to 100 and start putting together your Whirlwind Barbarian. I don't know for sure, but I think it's likely that collecting enough legendaries to make a fully functioning Whirlwind build won't be as easy as it was in the beta. I guess some would say that's pretty fucking obvious, but hopefully this video helps you identify affixes that you should save to start modeling your build. Here's just some extra info I got. I'll start off with The legendary affixes that summoned Dust Devils, Earthquakes, and Ancients were pretty satisfying visually and damage-wise if they were your first legendary, but their damage wouldn't scale with your power, and as you progressed further into your build, and different effects started to synchronize with your skills, their damage really fell off. Also, without a single legendary, you can start to snapshot effects on Whirlwind as early as level 21. 1 point into any weapon mastery skill, and a few points to work your way up to expose vulnerability in the weapon mastery section of the skill tree, and your Whirlwind will apply vulnerability on hit for 1 to 3 seconds if you hold the skill channeled. If you invest 3 points, that's a 20% damage buff on everything you touch for 3 seconds, including a boss. If you're playing with friends, you guys could really be able to take advantage of this. Attack speed on Whirlwind, I don't think it does shit. The ticks are the same, the damage looked the same too, and this was an 80% attack speed buff that I was testing. I mean, I should see a difference, and I really didn't. Hopefully that changes, or maybe someone figures out how to use it properly with a Whirlwind build. I'm just an idiot, I don't know. Let's talk about gear. What are we looking for? We're looking for damage to core skills, damage to close enemies, physical damage, critical hit chance, critical hit damage. Keep in mind that Whirlwind Barbarian has the option to slow, to taunt, and to apply vulnerability to enemies through your skill tree. So if possible, get some damage to crowd controlled enemies, damage to slowed enemies, extra vulnerable damage. Keep in mind that a boss can't be crowd controlled until they are completely staggered. And in the beta, that took too long to do. However, you can apply vulnerability to a boss at any point. In addition to those attributes, I think we're also looking for reduced cooldowns, and definitely we're looking for movement speed. I think lastly I'll say that the right move is to bind your move, interact, and basic skill to their individual keys. This way you can avoid casting skills by accident when you're trying to pick up items or interact with doors and switches, and so you can improve your movements when kiting monsters or avoid mechanics. It's a little awkward to get used to if you haven't done it before, but I really think it helps. I personally have dodge binded to tab, force move binded to my spacebar, interact binded to my mouse wheel, and basic attacks on the left click. Let me know if I missed anything or if anything I said was completely fucking wrong. I'm interested to learn more about the game, but anyway, good luck on release, boys.